Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report, and of course, as always, on the first hour on Wednesday, we have LaRouche Foundation expert Harley Schlanger, one of the remarkable young people running for a political position. Many of them actually running in the Democratic Party, but they're running against Obama. In fact, Keisha Rogers, her platform was to impeach Obama and to bring in Glass-Steagall, which is the exact opposite of one of the party power brokers. We see also a fight going on at the GOP convention in Tampa, Florida, where there was a stupid move by the Romney folks to actually push in rule changes which have destroyed not only this convention, but future conventions where groups such as the Tea Party and the conservative pro-life movement would be completely castrated. This is not going to happen. And I can tell you that if the Romney wants to get elected, certainly his current timeline suggests that even though he brought in Ryan, which is a positive move, if they continue these stupid moves, they're going to not have their base and they're going to lose to Obama. Obama, the most incompetent president, the most evil president we've ever had, who needs to be impeached before the election even starts. So tell us what's going on, Harley. This is a pretty nasty situation. I call it the selection, not election. And the so-called management of the GOP candidacy of Romney and Ryan is being run by a bunch of yahoos. They're totally incompetent.
Well, I spoke with Mr. LaRouche earlier today, and he was very sharp in what he said. He said, this is how Hitler came to power. The way Obama is running what he's doing. Because Hitler knew in December 1932, his party suffered a pretty big defeat. They were almost bankrupt. And Hitler threatened in front of the party leadership to kill himself. Now, in the background, instead of moving in to crush Hitler, a coup was pulled to put him in as chancellor in the end of January 1933. So December 32, his party was on the ropes, it was collapsing, it was running out of money. And a group of bankers, which included people who are relevant for this election campaign, namely Wall Street bankers associated with the Harrimans and the Bush family, worked with Montague Norman, the head of the Bank of England, and the Schroeder banking interests in Germany, and Max Warburg playing a key role, another banker, to put Hitler into power. Now, what we have with Obama is someone who has already demonstrated in his first term his contempt for the constitutional process in the United States. He's taken to himself the power of all three branches, really, that he's the ultimate authority. He has life and death decision-making power over who lives and who dies among our so-called enemies with the drone policy.
And also among our citizens as well.
That's right.
As well as our citizens with the... Yeah, including, by the way, most people don't realize that the American killed in Yemen was an American that didn't go through a proper trial. Even though he's Muslim. We also have Americans with the National Defense Authorization Act. They can jail, torture, and or execute you at the government's whim and the executive's whim without any habeas corpus. This is total tyranny. It's actually more out in front than either during the time of Adolf Hitler or during the Nazi regime or during the time of the rise of the Russian Empire under Vladimir Lenin or the worst days of the Communist Revolution in China where they killed 62 million Chinese.
Now, the important point that Mr. LaRouche is making is that in terms of the traditions of American politics, Obama is terribly weak. He's presided over the worst economic situation we've had, even worse than the last depression, because there's no way out of it if he continues. Secondly, he's pushing with his policy towards Syria and Iran toward a nuclear confrontation with the Russian military. And so here we have a situation where there are very few people who actually like him. There was a very interesting statement put out today by a leader of the International Association of Machinists. This is a 750,000-member union, which includes the aerospace and a section of the auto industry, the most skilled machine workers in the country. And one of their leaders in Charlotte put out a statement saying Obama must be replaced. We cannot let him run as the Democratic nominee. But outside of that, and outside of what LaRouche and our candidates have been saying, the Republicans are playing stupid partisan games, basically saying, well, Obama's weak, so we'll just beat him. We don't have to impeach him. We don't have to attack his policies. For example, today, Randy Neugebauer, the congressman from Texas, who initially said the LIBOR rigging looked like criminal activity, today gave Geithner and the Federal Reserve a pass. That's a Republican who said, well, we'll look at this after the election. The Republicans could walk into the White House by going after the fraud and the corruption of the banks, but they won't do it. So here's Obama, who's very weak politically, not loved by anyone except himself, and yet no one has the guts to stand up and say, you have to leave. Now, that's how LaRouche said it's very much like the Hitler period.
Well, we have
to bring him down.
We have it's further proof that there's what I call a two-compartment snake party, where it's obvious that the infighting, both in the Democratic Party and the Republican, isn't to bring about new solutions to problems, but to maintain the power brokers that are currently in control because they're losing the final last stages of control of the financial system, the political system, and their answer to it is war.
That's absolutely right. And the proof of that is that it would be very easy to put together, if I would be hired by Romney, I could give him 4 or 5 points, simple points that would have been, you deal with the banking crisis by jailing corrupt bankers and going with Glass-Steagall. Secondly, that we repeal the Patriot Act and the National Defense Authorization Act, which takes away due process and gives Obama the right to throw people in prison. Just a couple of steps. Third, we create jobs. We invest credit in new physical production. And this would be a winning ticket. Instead, Romney's going for more of the same, tax cuts, budget cuts, the same policy which has not worked for the last 12 years. It hasn't worked. It's putting us deeper in debt. We're losing what's left of our industry, our skilled workforce. We're losing our youth. I just was at a conference yesterday in Austria, a top European Union conference, and you can see how things are collapsing and they're pretending nothing's wrong. They said the biggest crisis in Europe is that there's a decline in population among the young, and there are too many obligations for pensions and health care for the elderly. So one young woman stood up and said, well, what are we supposed to do about that? Should I just have a lot of babies and then work till I drop dead? They don't have solutions. And the American people are watching this as though it's a train wreck about to occur, and no one's pulling the switch.
Well, we have solutions to it. The problem is the solutions aren't going to be implemented because the globalists have set up the dialectic of the conflicts, of the economic chaos, of the credit collapse, just like in 1929, which was engineered, too, by the same banksters. The world wars were all engineered by the same banksters. All the dialectics, including even transferring a nuclear and space technology to Russia and China during the Cold War, this is all by design to make sure the dialectics, both sides would have enough weapons to destroy each other. And, of course, in the meantime, the most profitable thing for social change and for power and control is war. So the globalists have decided it's time for World War III.
Well, the way LaRouche talked about it last night was very interesting because he talked about how an oligarchy organizes an empire. And the key to their policy is to keep people stupid. And they think they're different.
Yeah, they have this strange idea that they're a different species and that we are the underlings and we don't understand the architecture, the dialectics, the symbology, etc. Therefore, we are fit for consumption and control.
That's exactly it.
Back in a moment.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo. And so
Welcome back, and Harley, let's continue. This is very important people understand the reality of what's going on. I believe we're in an endgame scenario. If we look at the current situation, Obama started off a month or so ago, maybe 7-8 points ahead. I think that's probably dissolved a little bit with Ryan being added, but I think that the latest moves, especially the Republican National Convention, were some of the most stupid moves that I've ever heard. Give an example. I just want to read a tiny portion and get your response to this. It's an article which I'm going to post across. It's called RNC Disenfranchises Paul Delegates, Rigs Rules to Nominate Romney. And drowning out shouting Ron Paul supporters is not an easy thing to do. Republican delegates voting for Mitt Romney found this out Tuesday as Paul's contingent chanted point of order and let him speak as they witnessed the rewriting of the GOP rules, clearing the way for unchallenged coronation of the now official Republican nominee for President Mitt Romney. Excuse me. The RNC's rule change effectively disenfranchises Republicans supporting anyone other than the establishment's man and left the 10 of Maine's 24 delegates locked out of the process, preventing them from casting votes for Ron Paul. Railroaded and rejected, the unseated Maine delegates walked out of the Tampa Bay Times Forum, leaving the convention in the hands of the predetermined winner and his proxies. It's a disgusting, disgusting display of hostile takeover from the top down, said Maine delegate Ashley Ryan, according to the article in Los Angeles Times. It's an embarrassment, she quoted as saying. Maine wasn't alone in expressing its displeasure and disgust at the RNC's pro-Romney rule manipulation. Now, this is something that Romney shouldn't, and what he should have done was actually embrace some of the policies of Ron Paul, who's not going to run again, and also fiscal conservatism and war conservatism instead of promulgating new wars. And get the Glass-Steagall back up and get the American economy going and build infrastructure. But instead, they decided to go to war with Ron Paul, which is to destroy further their base, which further guarantees, as I've said before, my bets are that we're going to have a second term of Vladimir Obama. Would be a good term for him. Vladimir Ilyich Obama.
Let me tell you what I think on this, because this was predictable. It's not, I mean, Romney won. He won the nomination, but he didn't win the hearts and minds of the Republican Party.
Yeah, exactly.
The vote was split. Romney was getting 35 to 38%, 40%, and then Santorum, Paul, and Gingrich were getting the majority among the three of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, instead of trying to work out some kind of arrangement with them, and of course Gingrich is now kissing Romney's feet, and Santorum also. I mean, to Ron Paul's credit, Ron Paul said, I can't endorse him because he disagrees with me on too many issues. Romney said that Ron Paul could address the convention, provided his speech was vetted by Romney. And he said nothing critical of Romney or nothing favorable on Obama. Of course, Ron Paul was not going to praise Obama, but he refused to say that he would give a censored speech. And so what the Romney people did was in Maine, Louisiana, Minnesota, Oregon, and a couple of other states, they ruled that people who were supporters of Ron Paul but elected as Romney delegates could not even be seated. And they furthermore, it's not just Ron Paul they're doing this to, it's the Tea Party, it's conservatives, it's Christian pro-life activists. It's
everybody.
So
basically, it's, I would say that now the chances after this stunt by the Romney delegates and by the powers that be in the Republican National Committee, their chances are about 1%, like the chances of being hit by an asteroid that the Romney-Ryan will get in.
Well, they certainly harmed their chances, despite the fact that Obama is the worst president we've ever had.
Well, it's like you're going to go into an Olympic race, and you decided before the race to amputate both legs. How are you going to run on the stumps? It's like, how stupid is that?
As I said, Romney could win if he merely concentrated between now and November on how Tim Geithner, with Obama's full support, has protected the corrupt and immoral banks from profiting from their illegal speculation, while the elderly, the sick, the poor, the people who rely on Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, police and firemen have all been cut so that we can continue the trillions of dollars of bailout to these corrupt bankers. The American people are angry. They want leadership to tell them that. The problem is Romney is being funded by those same interests who funded Obama last time. And by the way, Wall Street is still giving Obama a lot of money. They've rigged it. And
they're like Don King. They have both fighters in the ring.
Yeah, and neither of them are planning on landing a punch. They're going to let their surrogates in the media make the American people mush-headed about who's planned to cut 1% here from Medicare and 3% there from something else. And they're not even going to talk about anything that's real, like how to create jobs, how to take the potential in programs such as NWAPA, the North American Water and Power Alliance, to create millions of jobs. They're not going to talk about Glass-Steagall. They've taken everything real off the table. And by the way, Romney and Obama don't have any disagreement when it comes to the war that Obama is trying to start in the Middle East. So we're getting two sides of the same rotten coin.
Yeah, it's like being told by the surgeon, we can either give you chemotherapy or radiation, and you've got a 5% chance of survival, and it will be unpleasant at best.
Well, and what LaRouche has said is that a second term of Obama will probably see the end of the United States. Now, some people say, well, isn't that scare tactics? Isn't that...
No, I don't think it is. I think it's very realistic. Well, look at how many states and cities are going bankrupt. Look at the animus. There really is a very grave danger. Why do you think that Obama and the government are ordering millions of hollow-headed bullets? I worked in the trauma unit. When you get hit with a hollow-headed bullet, it shreds the tissue. You can't even sew someone back together. The government are buying these because they're planning on killing American citizens. I expect Obama and the powers that be behind him to want to declare martial law in the second term.
Well, I think the point is that they're going to have to declare martial law because there are going to be food shortages, power shortages, energy shortages. There's going to be anger in the cities. There already is a lot of anger in the black community. There's tremendous anger at Obama, but they're being played by, yes, sure he's corrupt, but he's corrupt for you. He's your guy. And I think we're going to see a smaller black turnout this time, but it's still going to be almost all for Obama because people are still playing by these silly games.
Yeah, you turn on the television, even these so-called comedians, which are playing political games, and it's quite disgusting because, we have problems on both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, but Obama is not, she's giving a pass by the media. They're just letting him get away with murder.
They're protecting him completely.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like, why don't you guys get real? You're destroying the fact that people would trust anything that you say. It's almost like a comedy routine without any punchline. Really awful. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and Harley, let's continue this analysis. Let's get on to what Linda LaRouche talked about in terms of what's going on. The disarray, I think, is part of actually the game. I believe the puppeteers at the top just are giggling and laughing. Isn't it great how incompetent our people are? And they think it's contrived incompetence. I really think that the incompetence of Romney is part of the process. I think that the castrating of Congress by executive orders where the Congress won't even impeach Obama when he passes a number of executive orders like the NDAA, and now the intention to pass the small arms treaty, which apparently from my sources will occur right after the election, as well as the Law of the Seas, or the International United Nations Law of the Seas treaty, which are totally unconstitutional. So, and Obama's already threatening the Senate. So we're going to have a horrifying next couple of years. And I think even the election, if Obama gets in, will be disputed in terms of whether or not he's even should be on the voter rolls. He'll be disputed for the next year or so, and there's a really grave risk that this country will start to break up in the next 4 to 6 years. And if there is a 2016 election, there's still America. My guess is that the right, which I think the RNC wants to destroy the conservative right and the Ron Paulers, they will be back in such a force that there's a very real possibility of a third party rising and destroying the Republicans and Democrats if they don't get rid of Obama, and the Romney-Ryan approach, which is to have a complete disregard for the grassroots and their base.
Well, if we're still here.
If we're still here.
I'm very concerned about...
If we're still here, yeah. In other words, it's speculative to think even that we may even have a country, or that there may be even a world, because if you start the Third World War, and certainly the policies that Obama and, by the way, Romney are doing, isn't one where we're going to say we're going to remove these weapons in Syria to try to reduce the risk of war. It's actually we're going to do an attack which will inflame Russia and China. And they should be collaborating with us to make sure we stabilize the situation rather than having exchange of incoming nuclear, chemical, scalar, biological weapons, which is very probably going to happen if we continue on the same timeline.
Let me make a point about the Syrian conflict and then embed it in this bigger picture that Mr. LaRouche talked about in terms of the history of human societies. In the last days, it's become clear, even the London Economist is pointing out that the Assad forces have successfully suppressed at least part of the revolt. And they've done it in a typically strong military action. I mean, governments have the right to defend themselves. Now, the military in the United States is very concerned about a no-fly zone that Obama and Hollande of France and Cameron of Britain are talking about, because they're saying that it will be extremely different from Libya, where Gaddafi didn't really have an air force, because the Syrians have some old planes, but they also have some very modern planes. They have radar, they have other things. Now, without getting into that too much, we're crossing a red line if Obama goes ahead with this. Yeah. Now, why would he do it? There are two things. One is, first of all, his narcissistic personality. He said last summer, after Gaddafi was killed, that Assad is next and we're going to finish him off. Now, Obama actually does, on some level, think that he has that kind of power. And so when a Nero figure is thwarted in their goal, they get more desperate and more suicidal. Remember, Nero killed himself. Now, secondly, Obama works for the empire, for a financial oligarchy that is terrified that if they can't keep Russia and China under control, they'll lose control of the global financial system and be defeated. And therefore, they use thermonuclear war as a blackmail. If you push us, we'll blow up the world. It really is the Louis XIV, après nous le déluge, after us the flood. If we can't survive, we'll wipe you out. Now, you have to understand, Americans have trouble understanding the oligarchical mentality because we have a constitution which imbues us with freedom and rights. But most of human history, very few people have had the rights that we take for granted in our country.
Including around the world right now.
Protection.
Including even right around the world right now even.
Because if you live in Greece, you have no rights. You elect a government, and if your government goes against the European Union bureaucrats, your government is crushed. The president of Greece just said, look, we have no power. In Spain, in Italy, in France, the same thing. Once you give up national sovereignty, you have no power. Now, why aren't people in rebellion? Because of the degeneration of our culture, which has made everything about me, now. I want my ice cream. I want my drugs. I want my sex. I want my beer. I want my entertainment. I want my NFL. Now, if you look at what happened in history, empires can implode because of their internal corruption. But the only way to defeat an empire is with ideas. And the best example is the way Nicholas of Cusa who is a very important figure in the church and also in science, launched a project during the Council of Florence in the 1430s, which led to the map maker Toscanelli providing maps to someone named Christopher Columbus, who came to this new world to create an alternative to living under feudal oligarchy in Europe. And it took a while for it to stick and to really work, but our founding fathers had that conception of not bringing nobility, oligarchy, to our shores. And it's in our Constitution. Now, here we are in 200-something years after the Declaration of Independence, and we're giving up those sovereign rights. And that's what the Obama-Romney election represents, the absolute pinnacle of the ignorance of the American people. And I'm telling you, the fact that people will say, well, if you don't like Obama, you have to vote for Romney, or, well, I don't like Romney, so therefore I have to stick with Obama. That's the kind of cowardly ignorance that's dumbed down our nation so that we don't really seem to have a choice. Now, I'm calling on your listeners to stand up against that kind of ignorance, to join our mobilization even to the last minute to get Obama out, and I mean even up till the election eve. And the only way to do it is for people to stand up and say the truth. He's got to step down. Anything in the Democratic Party, especially with a decent program, would be more electable than Romney. And it's not about Democrats or Republicans, it's about saving the nation. So I want to give out our number, because I want your listeners to call us and tell us they're prepared to stand up against this imperial con game that's been presented. It's 800-922-2907. Call us and just say you listen to Dr. Deagal's program, the NutriMedical Report. You'd like to be part of the mobilization to get rid of Obama. 800.
That's number one. Yeah, go ahead. 800-922-2907.
That's right.
This is so important that people grasp this. I'd put now, considering the latest stupid move by the Republicans, they kind of like blew both, as they say, legs off, and you can't run on stumps, that the chances of them winning this election now are fading fast. Which means if we don't remove Obama, we're going to be facing, number one, a Mideast war, oil at $300 to $500 a barrel, a collapse of many cities and states that will go bankrupt, and countries, a food shortage with prices going through the ceiling with commodities driven by not only climate shift but also the devaluation of the U.S. dollar, people's profits going, the government trying to institute Obamacare in the midst of a disaster, losing a lot of the institutions, health professionals, etc., corporations and businesses going under, and not only here but overseas, even in China, there'll be revolution because they can't maintain their superheated economy when we collapse. That's what we're facing. Back in a moment.
What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world it will be.
Welcome back, and when the Republican Party disrespects pro-life, conservative, and Ron Paul, conservative fiscal Ron Paul people, this is the end of the road for the Republican Party. They have blown their feet off and their legs, and they will not be running in any races. This is almost like a damage control, as if Romney already expects to lose or has been told to lose. And then Obama, this maniac, he plans on putting executive orders and shoving through the Lost Treaty and the Small Arms United Nations Treaty. He doesn't want to solve any of the economic problems. Plans to actually expand what's called QE3, which is ridiculous. Even Ron Paul, Romney, who used to disagree and say nasty things about Bernanke, his latest advisors are telling him, no, think if you get in power, you might consider renominating Bernanke for another term in 2014. I think more of the same.
Well, the line among so-called economists is that Bernanke and Geithner and Obama stopped the Great Depression from happening.
Oh, come on.
Now,
they actually are. We are in a depression. The fact is, it's a big lie that we're in a recession. 3/4 of negative growth is a depression. It's a mathematical principle in economics.
Yes, but if you keep pumping huge sums of money into the banks, it shows up as economic growth, even though it's not even real money. Now, here's the interesting thing: the Bureau.
It's almost like the formation of a zombie, or someone who cosmetizes someone who's dead several days, where you cosmetize them so they look like they have a pulse, a blood pressure, and even have a good attitude toward their funeral.
Well, look at the stock market; it keeps going up, even though the component industries are collapsing. But let me just make this one point. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, often known as the Bureau of Lies and Statistics, put out an interesting report this week. What they said is that the economic conditions for the majority of the American people were worse during the Obama recovery than during the Bush recession. What they showed, for example, is in African American families, 8.1% drop in income. Hispanic families, 5.8% drop in income. This is from June of 2009 through December of 2011. So that's during Obama's period. The average American person who's employed has lost 2.9% in real wages. Now, of course, it's much more than that, because a small group of people have made huge profits, which throws off the curve. Now, the other thing is that Americans have lost 40% of their net wealth after the Lehman collapse in September 2008. 40% on the average. Now, the richest 1% have been gaining enormously. So that means the average American has probably lost more than half of their real assets, whether it's the loss of money in their home because they've paid, and now their house is worth half or less its value. They've lost their retirement. Their 401ks have tanked. They've lost their jobs. The situation under Obama has been a catastrophe. And Romney, the only thing he can say he'll do is cut regulations, cut taxes, and cut spending. That's exactly what the European Union has done in countries like Greece, Spain, and Italy, which has led them to have negative growth. In the case of Greece, it's now about 8% a year negative. Spain is heading toward 8% this year, and Italy 6.7% negative growth. How is that policy going to work in the United States? It's not. It's not supposed to. Their interest is protecting the corrupt banks.
I don't know how this is going to work, though.
That's all Obama and Romney represent.
I don't know how it will really work unless these millions of bullets are designed to kill many, quote, insurgent Americans that really can't get into their bank accounts, or their money's devalued, or they can't afford groceries or gas to get to work.
Well, I think they're planning to run television programs convincing you that not eating is good for you.
Yeah,
Makes you look better.
Yeah, you need to look like a little cachexia will do you good.
Yeah, getting rid of food, utilities, transportation, these things will really be helpful, because then you can have a less complex life.
Actually, you know what they should do? They should actually have the tagline for it. Carbon capture is the best way to save the planet, and the best way to capture carbon is to put you in a casket.
Or you need a simpler, more relaxed life. Let it kill you.
Yes. That's
Something
better.
like that.
Yeah. Simpler, more relaxed life. You know, after rigor mortis is gone, your bodies will totally relax.
That's right. Now, look, the important point here, I mean, we're making light of it, but this is a Hitler moment.
Oh, yeah.
Obama
is in the... what is the year in Germany when Hitler took a turn for the Nazi worst? Because when he first came, he was actually doing some pretty good things with the economy.
Actually, there are two things that happened. One is that there was some infrastructure spending to prepare for the war. But at the same time, the Reichstag fire was the second month he was in office.
Right.
And he used that to collapse the government, to shut down political parties. He used May Day. He invited all the labor leaders to Berlin to march in the May Day parade, and then the next day he arrested them. and set up the Nazi Labor Front, so he destroyed the unions. The night of the Long Knives, he killed his opposition in his own party, and then killed General von Schleicher, who had been the last chancellor before him. So, you know, the key thing is that people knew Hitler was a lunatic. They knew he should not have been allowed into power. People in the United States didn't know that about Obama in 2008 because the media covered it up. But by now, there's no excuse for anyone to be saying, well, let's kill Obama 4 more years, give him a chance. And so again, I'm calling on your listeners to stand up and not take being slaves for Obama. Because Obama is working as a slave master for the empire. And if people don't fight him, then they've given up the most precious thing, which is their immortal soul. They've sold it out to the slave master. So I'm asking people to call us to get into this fight. I give the number again. It's 800-922-2907. We're running out of time. 800-922-2907. Don't take this sitting down.
Exactly. So in other words, what you're saying is you're prophesying, like the Star Wars saga, that we're approaching Emperor Obama Palpatine.
Well, I think that Obama, one of the things LaRouche said in drawing this Nero comparison, is that Obama is very fragile.
Yes, fragile but dangerous.
This guy could crack. And we've got to get him to crack before the election.
Well, if he cracks after the election, it's very probable that if there's an economic downturn or a major explosion in the Middle East and the economy collapses, that they will declare martial law. And people say, oh no, Dr. Deagal, they can't do that. I said, sure they can. They can control all the airports and all the roadways, and they can turn off the power grid and turn it on and off at will. They can do all kinds of things. They can start seizing people in the dark in little black vans. They can, with an NDAA, just grab you and give you a rendition to an all-expenses-paid torture camp where your family or even habeas corpus your attorney can't find your carcass, and they may not even return the body parts after they finish doing what they're doing to you.
Well, they're already using drones for so-called police work in the United States.
Right. They have. This is one of the most obscene things: is that the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, is given airspace, even though pilots' organizations are terrified that one of these drones is going to run into an airline jet, even though they supposedly aren't going to intersect airspace. This is not smart to have 200,000 drones flying around.
The Israelis had their first drone strike last week. And what's to say that this technology won't get in the hands of someone else that would use it to bring down planes? So this is a totally dangerous technology, but Obama is a totally dangerous character.
Well, guess who's got access to some of the most advanced drones? The Iranians brought down a drone last year, and they have access to all of the advanced technology in them. And I'm certain that they're no slouches, neither the Russians or Chinese.
That's
it's only a matter of time before they have the asymmetric warfare game is over, and we're now one-upped by people who don't have any restraint because they realize we're coming to kill them, and they're on our doorstep. It's not good.
You don't have much time.
Yeah, we have to remove Obama-nectomy or hell to pay, as they say.
Talk to you next week.
Amazing. It's hard to believe that the Romney campaign would pull this kind of stunt off at the RNC. Damn it. What can I say? Back in a moment with Hour 2.